Hey, everybody, how's it going? It's me, James Introcaso, the managing editor of Arcadia, pronouns he, him, and I am here with one of our incredible authors from Arcadia 13. So, Steve, why don't you introduce yourself, tell people who you are, what you do in the world of tabletop role playing games, and what you wrote for Arcadia?
Great. Thanks, James. So my name's Steve Fidler. I'm a game designer, tabletop RPGs, D&D 5th edition in particular. I run Vorpal Dice Press. Pronouns are he and they. And yeah, I mean, I write a lot of player options. Pretty well known for managing Amaroon's Almanac, which is a tour of the Forgotten Realms. Done a lot of work on Mythic Encounter Lines books, mainly through DM's Guilds. I have the Warden class, Prism class, Chosen class, quite a few classes. And yeah, great. And yeah, love making tabletop RPG stuff.
That's awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and Arcadia 13. How did I miss that?
Yes, exactly. It's awesome to have you here because you wrote group maneuvers for Arcadia 13. So give me like the high level overview. What is group maneuvers about? For people who may not have read it this time around, or maybe who read it a little while ago and need a refresher, what is group maneuvers?
Group maneuvers are lots of ways to use your reaction, all inspired by the way that your teammates are working together. So, one guy does one thing, the other halfling over in the corner jumps on and adds into the effect with the reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a classic, X-Men when you've got the fastball special and Colossus is throwing Wolverine at a Sentinel. It's that sort of feeling with these maneuvers, which I think is really great. So take me through the article now. I'd love to go like section by section and just talk about what's in this thing. What can people expect when they're checking out group maneuvers? And we can start with the learning maneuvers section because I think that's probably the most important. How do we learn these things, and then what do they do?
Right. So learning maneuvers, I kind of gave all the players, if you're using the group maneuvers, all the players have a number of maneuvers up to their proficiency bonus. So you get a little smattering to play with. You don't need to worry about what your teammates are learning because you can use your maneuvers as you see fit. And then I've given some options for learning them through downtime because everybody loves more downtime activities, along with a couple of complications because, something's got to go wrong. It's D&D, right? And those are not the only ways to learn maneuvers. Of course, we're actually talking in the MCDM Discord about this. They're great rewards for accomplishing a task. They're, background things. If you want to throw a background thing in there or just give your players an extra one for doing something cool, by all means. They're not so powerful that's not something you can do. And then the role-playing a maneuver, because you got to know that these maneuvers create really memorable moments, right? You push the troll over and he trips over your halfling buddy. How did that happen? You got to explain it to everybody, right? So give a little bit of guidance on how to do that. Yeah.
And then one big thing that I am a huge fan of is in the next section, using maneuvers. So you and I actually, we've talked about this on Twitter before together too. I'm wondering if you could talk to me about the inspiration thing that's going on here and why you felt it was important to include it. But first tell me what it is, and then we can talk about why it was important, because I love it.
Right. So I've written a little paragraph here to give you an optional way to use inspiration beyond the advantage or disadvantage that D&D gives you, where when you're performing a maneuver, you can burn an inspiration to do it without using your reaction. So you get to use 2 maneuvers that round. You also get advantage on any attack rolls or ability checks, and the target, if required makes any saving throws with disadvantage. And it's 3 reasons I did that. 1, it's incredibly cinematic. It's going to make a very, very cool moment. 2, if you're having a hard day, and you just want to make sure that you don't fail, this is going to do that for you. It could have almost been written as it just works, but you throw some rules in there for you. And 3, inspiration needs more ways to be used. Most people forget they even have inspiration.
Yes.
A lot of people don't even know. They think it's an optional rule. It's not an optional rule. It's part of 5th edition. It's one of the mechanics that makes 5th edition what it is. So more ways to use inspiration, I think, is something a lot of designers are forgetting about. Something we should be using more often.
I agree 1,000%. So take me now through your maneuvers, right? This is when we get to the meat of the article. It is the delicious pastrami in our article sandwich. Talk to me about some of these maneuvers and pick a couple of your favorites and tell me how they work. Let's sell this to the audience.
So most of the maneuvers are 1-2 people. I'm going to skip kind of to the bottom here because the very first group maneuver that I wrote was Whirling Magic, which is the chrono trigger, jump down, start spinning my sword, get a fireball on there, and add to the effect. It's a huge trope in RPGs and fantasy, flaming sword, combining spells and swords. So I had to write that one. That was the first one I wrote, which got rewritten about 1,000 times because it has to. And then the tabletop trip, which is one of my other favorites, is it's the maneuver I describe at the start of the article and the little scenario I outlined where you go to push somebody and your buddy gets down on their hands and knees behind and forces the trip to happen and humiliates them. Because, you got knocked over. It's funny, right?
It is. It's great.
And I've written, I like maneuvers as a concept, not just group maneuvers, but like fighter maneuvers, battle master maneuvers, that sort of thing. And if you've seen any of my previous work, I wrote a variant fighter that got maneuvers as a base class feature. I wrote a variant of fighting styles that gives maneuvers to everybody that would normally get fighting styles. And the tabletop trip is in all of them because it's just such a core trope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
totally is.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's no problem. And as I was going through, I wanted to make sure that there were maneuvers that were not entirely combat related. So we have the catapult jump. It might, it's just so iconic. Just up you go. And mixing magic and spellcasting and fighting, mixing archery, and just making sure I hit as many character tropes as possible to make sure everybody has something out of this.
Yeah, it's really great that it's not just a thing for martial characters, right? There are all these things that you can do if you're a spellcaster, but I also like that there are things on here that every time I introduce someone new to D&D, they want to do, right? So there's this one maneuver called Get Down, where essentially if you have evasion as a class feature, you can grab someone and pull them with you, right, to help. And every time somebody fails a saving throw against a fireball or whatever, somebody's like, oh, I rolled a 20, can I bring, this person with me? And it's like, oh, well, there isn't really a rule for that, and I'm the kind of DM who might try to house rule that, but to have this is really great because a player can say with confidence, like, yes, I can do this. I can, grab my friend and shield them from the blast. The other thing that comes up a lot for me is the dog pile maneuver, which is essentially that you can use your reaction to grapple a target when they fail a saving throw against a spell or effect that an ally creates, which is really fun, right? That idea of like, oh, while they're distracted, I'm gonna try to grab them and take them. Like that is not only is that the kind of thing that players ask to do all the time, it's also the kind of thing that can change your strategy in how you approach a conflict, because you can think like, oh, well, maybe if you cast this spell, I'll be able to grab the villain, and then I can bring the villain out of the gala, right? And we won't have this bloody conflict in the middle of a masquerade or that kind of thing. It can be more of a tense standoff. And I just love to see that in here, that it's capturing things that players, in my experience, have wanted to do for years, and you're making it possible, which I think is really, really great. And you're also not leaving monsters out of the fun, which is the next section, and I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, so not just for monsters, but the monstrous maneuvers are a little funnier. They're, but they work, and they're just, if you're fighting the same old goblin, the same old hobgoblins, there's just little ways that you can kind of spice up the fight a little bit. So, we have our minion maneuvers, which are for the easy kill stuff, to give them something to do, something funny. You got this, right? And I played with the names a little bit. When an ally, and these are the monster's ally, targets a creature with a melee attack, the creature using maneuver can use this reaction to disengage and take off. It's classic, right? Oh, okay, I'm out. I'm taking off now. And even though I use a joke in the name, it can really inform the monster's tactics, right? Like, even though it's a joke, the monster could also be coming in to save their ally, knowing that they can do this, right? And then the brute maneuvers. So, you got your big guys that do different things. And I love the get help maneuver.
Yes. Yes.
Inspired by Thor Ragnarok. So
great movie.
After rolling initiative, it's awesome, so great. As long as the creature's not surprised and they're within 5 feet of an ally, they can use their reaction to throw the ally forward right into the fight. And something about the maneuvers is to remember, like the Battle Master maneuvers in the commanding strike and the maneuvering strike. Obviously, these are monsters. The DM's deciding what they do. I do write in this that you could give these to players. You would obviously talk with your other player about that before you throw them into the fight, just to be clear. You can't just throw your buddy into the fight without their permission, or you shouldn't.
Correct. Yeah.
Although it could be funny.
I mean, there are some truly dastardly, I would say, maneuvers in here as well. First of all, you have dragon maneuvers, which my first thought was, when you put this in front of me, was like, wait a second, just two dragons fighting the characters is a wild thing to begin with. And now we've got breath weapon group maneuvers. Just super wild. I really, really love those. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about cross breath, just because it's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, so cross breath is, I think of dragons, they're hyper intelligent, right? If you ever fight two dragons, you might not, but if you ever fight two dragons, they are definitely going to hit you with their breath weapon in two different directions so you can't get away. Of course they would. They're dragons. They're smart. They're going to do this. So essentially the way it works is, if one dragon's using their breath weapon, the other can use their reaction to use theirs to overlap the area, and you have disadvantage on the saving throw if you're in both areas. Doesn't increase the damage, but they're definitely going to flambe you, which is actually the name of the next maneuver.
Yes, yeah. It's I mean, it's really rich, and the options here are great. And like you said, even more can be made available to players, right? If I have a game that I remember fondly where I had two Dragonborn, and I'm sure they would have loved a cross breath maneuver, right? Where they could have breathed at the same time and done something like that. So there's a lot of fun to be had in the monstrous maneuvers, and a great way to sort of help uh, tactically with make your fights interesting, which you had said earlier, right? If you're fighting the same old hobgoblins, all of a sudden, hey, your hobgoblins are tossing goblins around in the fray, and it's pretty cool. So I'm a huge fan of that. And then after that, we get into the new character options, which I think you alluded to earlier, which are really great and fun.
Yeah, so the new character options. So this is something I do a lot now. Ever since Wizards of the Coast said it was okay to give new character options this way. Where anytime I'm making a new mechanic, I try to hook it into the classes and not just be this other thing. It's something that's integrated. So we give the fighters, Illrigger, Paladin, and Ranger a new fighting style, which lets them act like a gang. So they get an extra maneuver. They get some opportunity dice, which can improve their opportunity tax. Or when they're performing a maneuver, they can do some extra damage with them. A lot like superiority dice, but separate. And then we have the rogue, who's clever, gets the ability to use a maneuver without using their reaction. If they use their bonus action to prepare for it, it's a total rogue thing to do. It's a Batman tactic, right? Prepare for something to happen, and then you as long as you're anticipating it, you get to do it for free. And then the monk feature, which is just using ki to move quicker. And then the feat, which is similar to the gang tactics, but you also get the ability score increase on top.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and I do love that we have these extra options built in. And this was something that you are a real expert on, because I know that when we talked about this when you were crafting it, and I was like, oh, hey, I don't know about this, and you were like, well, actually, it works this way specifically for these reasons. And it was cool to have that level of expertise being brought in, and so we could chat about all of that and have some really good conversations that I thought went back and forth. And of course, then we come to one of my favorite things about the article, which is the magic items. I'm a fiend for magic items. I think that these are really, really great. So we've got a couple of different magic items, 4 different magic items that people can use, including the technique scroll, which I think is one of my favorites because it basically turns maneuvers into spell scrollable things that you can use to create. And then the Shield of Magic Reflection, and just some really good stuff. So do you have any of these that you would like to talk about? Take us through?
Yeah, I mean, the Shield of Magic Reflection was definitely... It shows one way that you can use maneuvers. If you're not willing to add it as a mechanic for your game, you can take the maneuvers and make them parts of magic items and give them out as rewards, which you can then take away from your players if you feel like they're abusing them. So it takes the Reflect Magic maneuver and makes it available to anyone. So you don't need Deflect Missiles, you don't need the ability to cast a spell like you would with the maneuver, but you gain that ability. I love the Headband of Magical Arts, which lets you use the magical maneuvers without requiring the ability to cast spells. And, it just allows you to do it. It just takes that restriction right off the top.
Yes, that's great. There's a question in chat about Arcane Echo. And the question is, how would you explain the maneuver, Arcane Echo, which is one of the maneuvers in the articles available to player characters, like, what does that look like to you narratively? How would you explain that? And I guess we should probably also say what Arcane Echo does, just so people understand what we're talking about mechanically and story-wise.
Right. So Arcane Echo is one of the spellcasting maneuvers, which when you see an ally within 30 feet casting a spell that you also know or have prepared, that's a casting time of 1 action and a range of self that targets an area. Thunder Wave is the archetypical example. You can use your reaction, expend the spell slot, and cast that spell as well. And the way I envision that is, Thunderwave for me is something that a dwarf would do, smashing their hammer on the ground, and boom, Thor style thunder everywhere. And you are kind of like quantumly entangled with them. You see them doing it, you just mimic their movements, you feed off their energy, you catch a bolt of lightning from their strike, and just as you hit, you amplify it outwards. That would kind of be one of the ways I might narrate that one.
Yes.
It's almost like
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and that's exactly how I would want to have my moves described as a player. We are getting towards the end of our time here, Steve, but before that, let's talk about you and the awesome stuff that you're doing. So obviously, you've got this Arcadia 13 article that you have put out. Is there anything else that you've worked on that people can check out right now that you would like to shout out while we're here?
Yeah, so on my website, vorpaldicepress.com, is my entire product library with product descriptions, covers, and links out to the product pages. A lot of it's DM Guild, some of it's Drive-Thru RPG, some of it's free. Love free. The Warden class is my almost magnum opus at this point. It was one of the first things homebrewing I ever wrote. It's been worked on for almost 6 years. It's had so many revisions and fine tuning. And I think it stands the test of time. The Prism class is near and dear to my heart. It was a big release for me. It was one of the first things that just like caught fire for me, and it got a lot of my own personal attachment in it. The Amaranth's Almanac line, not just for me, but so many great authors worked on that, and so much talent went into those, and it was really my first dip of my toes into project management. And we completed an 8-book series in a year during COVID remotely, which was, I thought, pretty remarkable. And the Mythic Encounters books, I've done 2 of those. I've done layout for one that I didn't write on, the Worms, Mythic Worms. And, the Chosen class. The Chosen class is free. It's newer, so it's a slightly less refined, but it's my take on the Sorcerer, because I find the Sorcerer very dissatisfying. So it's an entirely new mechanic, the way it functions, and I would love more people to see it and tell me what they think about it, because I think it's great, but I'd love other people to see that.
Excellent. Yeah, I would love for other people to see what you're making, because it's all just as cool as group maneuvers. And I think one of the first things I ever checked out was the Warden class, which you made. And the Warden is near and dear to my heart because it was a 4E class that I played and really loved. So I was like, oh, it's awesome that somebody else has done the work and put this out. And I would use it and allow it at my table for sure. It is really, really well done and tightly designed and great. So it is excellent. Is there anything coming up in the future you want to tease?
So I put out a teaser at Vorpal Dice Press on Twitter for Journey, which is my own tabletop RPG. It's just a quick 7 or 8 page little teaser of how the conflict resolution works in the game. It's going to be system agnostic, character driven, highly immersive, highly narrative. And I'm really kind of taking everything I've learned through working on D&D, through playing games, playing other tabletop RPGs, playing board games, and distill it into something that, I think people would want to play. So that one I'm really excited about. And I'll be doing some layout projects. I do a lot of graphic design these days. So I don't actually know if I can talk about too many of those projects, so I won't. But I have a lot of layout projects coming up. And a couple Kickstarters that I've done a bit of writing for, freelance writing. So looking forward to those seeing the light of day as well.
Well, I'm super glad that you wrote Group Maneuvers for us, and hopefully we'll keep talking. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on everything you've been creating. We've almost got to go, but before we do, where can people find you on the internet?
So best place to see my inane ramblings is at Vorpal Dice Press on Twitter. VorpalDicePress.com is where I do my project releases. I got a little bit of a blog there. And Vorpal Dice Press has a Discord, which you can get to from either of those places. Nice and small, not too much discussion going on there right now, but we're going to be really focusing on, collaboratively working together on creating homebrew. If you need help with your work, if you want to see my work, all that kind of stuff. It's just going to be a wholesome place for discussion.
That's awesome. That's a really, really great place and a great thing that you're doing and creating. And that's amazing. Well, people, go check out Group Maneuvers. Go check out Steve. Everything Steve is doing is wonderful. And we'll see you around.
Thanks.